Welcome back to my channel. Well, as a pilot of almost 55 years, 23,000 plus hours of flying time, I can't tell you how excited I am by Microsoft Flight Simulator. As a longtime X-Plane fan, I have to tell you that I'm just impressed by what they've done. The realism, right down to the flapping flags and reflections and glistening of the sun and shadows, it's just remarkable what they've done to create a very realistic experience. And I have to tell you, when you see it in VR, it's another degree of magnitude more realistic. It's so immersive when you wear that headset with a 3D effect. And I'm fortunate to have a Vario Aero, which has one of the best resolutions available, competing with that of a computer monitor, and it's really just amazing to see. Now, there is a downside to this really awesome realism that Microsoft Flight Simulator has, and that is that once your brain has been tricked to thinking this is real, when something that doesn't look right comes into your view, it is very noticeable. In fact, the Secret Service is trained to recognize fake bills of U.S. currency by learning exactly what the real bill looks like so well that when there is a forgery, it sticks out immediately. So after all my years flying around in various airplanes, military, civilian, and airliner, certain things stand out when they're not right, and I'm going to point some of those out to you in this video, where I'm going to show you 5 immersion killers that I've found in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Before we start, let me say I like Microsoft Flight Simulator and I want it to be better, and that's the only reason I'm pointing these things out. I think these are areas that can be improved. I'm also looking at the out-of-the-box version of Microsoft Flight Simulator and not any add-ons, which I know can correct a few of these problems. I really like to see a simulator that solves most of the problems without having a lot of add-ons required. And also, this isn't meant to be an exclusive list, but just 5 things that are immersion killers for me. Well, number 5 of my top 5 immersion killers is the pavement. The runways are way too sterile. They're improving in each update, but they're still pretty unrealistic. The pavement's too perfect and not marked up enough. I know this can be improved. Also, the pavement itself, the textures seem to be way too big. Look at the size of the stones in this pavement. It's way larger than any concrete I've ever seen in the first world. So that needs to be improved. And I think they just need to tighten up the texture. I think the texture's great. It just looks to be too big. Kind of like the grass and the trees were in the earlier versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Number 5, the pavement. The next item on my immersion killers is the ground servicing. The people, I always come into small airports, even empty airports with no vehicles in the middle of nowhere, and there's always these people with these carts waiting to park me, which is very unrealistic, and I've never seen this kind of carts for light aircraft, let alone 2 guys. Yeah, in the middle of nowhere, in small airports, the servicing should be reduced or eliminated. Really detracts from the end of a realistic flight. The second area that is a real problem is the ground vehicles. Ground vehicles always seem to be getting in the way and they refuse to move. And once you approach a ground vehicle, it's pretty much a virtual standoff as you face each other, and finally you just have to go ahead and taxi through them so that you don't sit there all day. I know this may seem like a small point, but Microsoft Flight Simulator is just so immersive that these little annoyances really detract from a wonderful experience. So number 4, ground servicing, vehicles, and personnel. My third biggest immersion killer is airport lighting. Now, the airport lighting is excellent in Microsoft Flight Simulator. My complaint is that it's too visible. You can see runway end identifier lights flashing. You can see the beacons flashing from very great distances, more than is realistic. Also, the rotating beacons are only supposed to operate during daylight hours when the weather is IFR, or below 1,000-foot ceiling and 3 miles visibility. But at every airport, they seem to operate all the time, and they make finding the airport unreasonably easy. I think they need to kill the daytime beacons for sure, and I'd like to see an assistance option to tone down the lighting a little bit. However, there is one area where Microsoft Flight Simulator really shines, and that is night lighting around the airport. In most previous home flight simulators, the runway lighting was visible from the side angle just about as well as it was looking down the runway, and that's just not the way it is. You can see the beacon here at about 1 o'clock, and the airport is almost a dark hole. And as we turn to a line closer to the runway, we start to see the runway lights visible, and that's just amazing and very true to life. So this is a great addition to night flying in the simulator. You can see the runways become visible when you line up with them, but from the side, airports are hard to find. If we can just get rid of those approach lights and beacons that are visible from 20, 30 miles away, even in the daylight sometimes, we'll have a much better experience. So it took till number 2 to find something that I think you'll agree is not nitpicking, and that is obstructions into the glide path at many airports in Microsoft Flight Simulator, especially those that are non-bespoke airports. Here I'm flying a visual approach into Santa Monica, California. I'm going to fly right on the glide path all the way in, and you'll see the trees interfering with the glide path and creating a hazard. Now this is negative training, either ignoring the VASI or ignoring the objects that you're flying through. So this needs to be corrected. The FAA has clear standards on terminal instrument procedures as far as obstruction clearance requirements around an airport, and these could easily be incorporated into an algorithm, I think, to limit the heights of certain objects around the airport proper. This would certainly be an improvement. So number 2 is glide path obstructions, and now on to my number 1 immersion killer for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So my top immersion killer for Microsoft Flight Simulator is taxiway clutter. You know, I finish a long flight successfully, maybe an instrument approach down to low minimums or just a scenic flight. I'm really into the total immersion of it, especially in my VR headset. And I clear the runway onto a taxiway, and on the way to the ramp as I'm completing my post-flight checks, I come up on something like this, an obstacle on the taxiway, in this case a VASI light blocking the way. And these things are everywhere. Taxiway signs, all sorts of taxiway lights right in the middle of the taxiways, and it just destroys the immersion. Look at the beautiful scenery we have here, and then you have this light that totally destroys the sense of reality. It may seem a small point to many, but to me it is a total immersion destroyer. And there you have it, my top 5 immersion killers. So as I conclude, just a few words about my 5 immersion killers. Microsoft Flight Simulator is a remarkable simulator. Visually, it exceeds anything I saw during my long airline career. Also, as an X-Plane user prior to Microsoft Flight Simulator, I had my doubts if Asobo and Microsoft were in this for the long haul, but they've continued to improve the product at a rapid pace. I have to say that after using Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 for a while now, I find X-Plane 12 to be a bit disappointing. I wish them well and I hope it works out. Competition is good for all of us, but right now I have to say they have a very tall mountain to climb. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you'll subscribe, share, comment, and click the notification bell if you'd like to be notified when I issue new videos. Thanks for watching.